Well, hello, I've jumped back on because obviously I ran off saying I had to go and do the reads, but it wasn't the reads. I was running particularly late for Spelling Shed for the rest of the kids that haven't made it into school. So yeah, I was running late for those, so I had to go. So, Skulduggery Pleasant, continuing on. Stephanie moved slowly. She kept her eyes open, didn't blink. Didn't do anything that might give it an excuse to resume its attack. Her knees straightened, the vampire moved with her. Its eyes blazed with sheer animal ferocity. All it wanted to do was rip her apart. All it wanted was her complete and utter annihilation. She forced herself to keep calm. "Easy, boy," she said softly, and the vampire snapped at the air. Its claws clicked against themselves. Even though they hadn't pierced her coat, her back was throbbing in pain. She knew that if it hadn't been for whatever material this coat was made from, that single swipe would have killed her. The vampire began moving towards her. Stephanie started to back away, but the moment she tried moving her foot behind her, the vampire's hackles rose. She froze. If it leaped from that distance, it would be on her before she knew what was happening. It kept coming, moving slowly, stalking its prey. The second skylight exploded, and then everything was happening too fast. The vampire broke its eyelock in a lunge, but Stephanie was already moving, twisting to the side as the claws lacerated the space where she had just been. The other vampire was on the roof and closing in. Stephanie sprinted for the edge of the building and jumped. Her legs hit branches and she flipped over and was crashing headlong into the tree, falling. She smacked from one branch to the next, each impact spinning her and making her cry out. She hit a branch with her ribs and the breath rushed out of her, and still she fell. Then there were no more branches, and for a moment it was just her and the sound of rushing air, and then the ground slammed into her from behind. Stephanie lay on the grass, trying to breathe. She could see the tree. She could see the gallery. She could see the sky. Something was falling towards her. Two things, actually. Two figures, dropping from the edge of the building. The vampires hit the ground and came at her. The window to the left of her shattered, and the security alarm pierced the night. Skulduggery landed in front of her. He thrust his hand out, and the air shimmered, and he caught one of the vampires, sending it hurtling back. The second one, though, kept coming, and Skulduggery threw fire at it, but it leaped, cleared the flame, and landed with both feet on Skulduggery's chest. They went down, and Stephanie's body started obeying her again. She got up, still struggling to breathe. The vampire swiped, and Skulduggery's shirt parted, and he cried out in pain. Stephanie wrapped both arms around the vampire's neck and pulled back. It hissed and flailed, and Stephanie stumbled back to avoid its claws. Skulduggery sat up, and he pressed his hand against the vampire. The vampire shot backwards like it had been fired from a cannon. It hit the wall of the building with a sickening thwack, and fell to the ground, and didn't get back up. Stephanie grabbed Skulduggery's arm and dragged him to his feet, and they ran for the car. Chapter 13. The Red Right Hand. How are you? Oh, that's Skulduggery, actually. How are you? Stephanie shrugged and managed not to wince. Her entire body ached. Good, she lied. Skulduggery glanced at her as he drove. You hurt? Are you injured? No, just a bruise here or there. I'm fine, really. You don't have to worry about me. Stephanie, you jumped off a building? Yes, but the branches broke my fall. Every single one of them. And how were the branches? Oh, a lot unlike pillows. You could have been killed. Yeah, but I wasn't. But you could have been. But I wasn't. I'm not denying that. You make a good point. But the fact is, you could have been. I've already lost a dear friend to all this, and I don't want that to happen again. She looked at him. Are you saying you'd be very upset if I died? Very is such a strong word. Well, if you teach me some magic, maybe I won't get hurt as bad next time. You said you weren't hurt. Are you kidding? 2 seconds. Are you kidding? I jumped off a building. Of course I'm hurt, Stephanie. Yes, Skulduggery. You can be really annoying at times. I know. So where are we going? We're going to at least find the doorway to the caves. Then we'll concentrate on finding the key to open it. Half an hour later, they were driving into Gordon's estate. Stephanie climbed stiffly out of the canary car and followed Skulduggery inside. The dogs really like this story as well, can you tell? The cellar was chilly and dark, and the single bulb hanging 2 seconds. The cellar was chilly and dark, and the single bulb hanging amid cobwebs wasn't doing its job very well. Countless years' worth of junk was collecting dust down here, and from somewhere in the dark corners came the occasional scuffle of rats. Stephanie wasn't scared of rats as a rule, but she wasn't too keen on them either, so they stayed away from the corners. Skulduggery had no such qualms. He examined the walls, scanning their surface as he moved sideways along them. Now and then he'd tap the wall, mutter to himself, and move along. Is this the same as the way into the sanctuary? Stephanie asked. Are you looking for a secret passageway? You watch too many haunted house movies, he said. But are you looking for a secret passageway? Yeah, he admitted, but that's just a coincidence. She pulled up the sleeve of her coat, revealing an ugly bruise on her arm, and covered it again before Skulduggery glanced over. Did Gordon build the passage? No, it was included in the house's original designs. A few hundred years ago, this was a sorcerer's house. And he built a secret passageway to the caves? I thought you said the caves were a death trap for sorcerers. I did say that, yeah. So why did he build himself a shortcut? Was he stupid? No, he wasn't just a nice one. He used to drag his enemies down there and leave them to whatever creatures were hungriest. What a charming history. I could see why my uncle bought the place. Ah! Stephanie moved closer. Skulduggery's hand was flat against the wall. He moved it and she could see a slight indentation, almost invisible to the naked eye. That's the lock. Yes, this is one of those good old-fashioned key-required locks. This kind of spell won't open. I could, I suppose, break it, but then it wouldn't work and we couldn't get the door open. I meant break through it. That would work if the door were in the same place as the lock, but I think these things are rarely that straightforward. So we need the key. We need a key. I don't suppose we'll find it on one of Gordon's key rings. Indeed, this is not a regular key we're looking for. We don't have to solve a puzzle to get to it, do we? We may. Stephanie groaned. How come nothing is ever simple? Every solution to a problem is simple. It's the distance between the two wherein the mystery lies. They turned off the light and climbed the stairs out of the dank mustiness of the cellar. They walked into the living room, and a man in a suit that looked almost Victorian in design, turned to greet them. He had black hair, thin lips, and his right hand, which was skinless, glistened with blood and wet muscle, and before Stephanie could even register surprise, Skulduggery was pulling the gun from his jacket. The man moved as gunshots filled the room, stepping to the side and waving his right hand. She didn't know what he did, but it worked, and no bullets hit him. Run! Skulduggery said, pushing her out of the room. She stumbled, and something moved beside her, and she turned as another man came at her. There was something wrong with him, something wrong with his skin, with his features. They didn't look real. They looked almost papery. She tried to hit him, but it was like hitting a bag of air. A fist swung at her, but unlike its body, the fist was heavy and solid, and it snapped her head back. She staggered, and it reached for her, but then Skulduggery was there, hurling it away. 3 more of them came through the front door. Stephanie ran to the stairs, Skulduggery covering her escape. Halfway up, she looked back as the man in the suit strolled into the hall. She shouted a warning, and Skulduggery turned to face him, but it was too late. Purple vapour gathered in the man's left palm, and he released it in a stream that flowed into Skulduggery and arched out behind him and above, flowing back into the other man's hand, forming a circle. Skulduggery dropped to his knees, tried to raise the gun, but couldn't hold it, and it fell to the floor. Him. Take him, the man said, cutting off the purple stream. Skulduggery sagged, and 3 of the paper men grabbed him, started dragging him out of the house. The man motioned to the 4th. You, kill the girl. And he walked out. Stephanie sprinted to the landing, the papery thing clumping up the stairs behind her. She ran to Gordon's dark study, slammed the door and pushed over one of the bookcases. It toppled and crashed, and books spilled across the floor. The door opened a fraction and hit the bookcase. Heavy fists started to pound on it from the other side. She went to the window, opened it and looked down. Even if she made this drop without breaking a leg, she'd land right in front of the man with the red hand. She backed off, looking around for a weapon. The bookcase slowly scraped across the floor, the door opening wider. Stephanie turned, moved behind the desk and hid. The pounding continued. She peered out. She could see a papery arm now, reaching round, then a shoulder, a head. She ducked back into hiding. One last heave and the door was open wide enough for the thing to step over the fallen bookcase. Stephanie stopped breathing. She peeked out. It crossed to the window and leaned out, hands on the sill. Stephanie rose and launched herself forward. It hurt her and tried to turn, but she slammed into it. Its heavy hands slipped off the windowsill and dragged it through, and Stephanie reached down, grabbed its lower leg and hauled. The thing tried to reach back through the window, but it was too late, and out it went with a faint rustle of paper. It landed in a heap, and she saw the man in the suit glare up at her. He waved his arm, and she threw herself away from the window. As the air turned purple and the window exploded, glass shards rained down on her back, but they didn't tear through the coat. She lay where she was, hands over her head, until she heard a car start up. Then she got up, glass and splinters of wood falling from her, and reached the window just in time to see the silver car leave the estate. They'd left her, obviously deciding it wasn't worth the effort to make sure she was dead. Stephanie pulled the crumpled business card from her pocket, got out her phone, and dialed the number. The call was picked up almost immediately. She spoke urgently. "I need your help. They've taken Skulduggery." "Tell me where you are," China Sorrows said. "I'll send someone to pick you up." Chapter 14. Elemental Magic. China Sorrows was very still. She sat with her legs crossed, hands flat on the arms of the chair. The sounds of the city at night did not seep into the apartment. They were alone in here, the only two people left on the face of the earth. Stephanie watched her and waited. The apartment was vast, occupying the space across the hall from the library. Stephanie had leapt out of the car China had sent, run up the stairs, and had been directed in here by the man in the bow tie. No time had been lost. Skulduggery was in danger, and they needed to get him back now. China spoke at last. "How can you be sure it was Serpine?" "What?" Stephanie said, exasperated. "Of course it was Serpine. Who else could it have been?" A delicate shrug of delicate shoulders. "You have to be sure, that's all." "I am sure, okay?" China looked at her, and Stephanie felt ashamed of her impatience. She lowered her eyes and closed her mouth. She was so sore. Her body was sore, but it was all right now because she was safe, and China would know what to do. Everything would be okay. Stephanie would wait for her to make a decision, no matter how long she deliberated. And she felt sure that Skulduggery would be safe, and well, even if he wasn't, what did it matter? China knew what was best, and if she wanted to wait, then Stephanie would be happy to wait. "No," she said to herself, "that's the spell. That's China's spell working on me." She dragged her eyes up and met China's gaze and thought she saw a flicker of surprise. "What are you going to do?" Stephanie asked. China rose from the chair in one graceful movement. "I'll see to it," she said. "You should go home, dear. You look dreadful." Stephanie felt herself blush. "I'd rather stay," she said. "It could take some time before plans are in place. Wouldn't you be more comfortable in familiar surroundings?" Stephanie didn't like disagreeing with China, but she couldn't go home, not while Skulduggery was in trouble. "I'd rather stay, please," she said softly. "Very well," China said with a small smile. "I must leave, but I'll return when I have news." "I come with you?" "I'm afraid not, dear." Stephanie nodded, hiding her disappointment. China left the building and accompanied by the man in the bow tie. Stephanie stayed in the apartment for a while, but despite the fact that it was almost 3 in the morning, she couldn't really relax. There was no TV, and the only book in a language she could understand was a leather-bound address book on a small table. She crossed the hall and stepped into the library. She passed a man in a porcelain mask, too engrossed in his reading to notice her. She walked slowly, reading the titles of the spines of the books, trying to keep her mind occupied. She could find something here, a book that had what she needed, then maybe she wouldn't be so helpless next time she went up against Serpine, or anyone else for that matter. If she'd even had the slightest bit of power, she might have been able to help Skulduggery. Stephanie followed one shelf to its end, then chose another one, wandering deeper into the labyrinth. She couldn't work out the system. The books weren't arranged alphabetically, or by author, or even by topic. It all seemed completely random. "You look lost." She turned. The young woman who had addressed her slipped a book back into place. She had tousled blonde hair and was pretty, but her eyes were hard, and she wore a sleeveless tunic that showed her strong arms. She spoke with an English accent. I'm looking for a book, Stephanie said, unsure. Well, this would be the place for that. Are there any books on magic? They're all books on magic, the young girl replied. I mean learning magic. I just need something, anything. You have no one to teach you? Not yet. I don't know how to find anything in here. For a moment, Stephanie felt like she was being studied. Finally, the young woman spoke again. My name is Tanith Lowe. Oh, hi. I'm afraid I can't tell you my name. No offence. Oh, none taken. The books are arranged in terms of experience. These are far too advanced for someone without instruction. 2 rows over, you might find what you need. Stephanie thanked her, and Tanith walked away, disappearing in the maze of shelves. Stephanie found the section she was referring to and started scanning the titles. An introductory guide to monster hunting, the sorcery doctrines, a history so far, 3 names. Stephanie took the 3 names book from the shelf and flicked through it. She came to the part of taken names, a chunk of the book that went on for roughly 200 pages, and scanned the headings in bold print. She turned pages, skimmed paragraphs, looking for anything that stood out. The best advice it had for taking a name was this. The name you take should fit you, define you, and already be known to you. She put the book back, unimpressed, and scanned a few more titles before she found it. Elemental Magic. She took it down, opened it, and started reading. This was it. This was what she was looking for. She found an old chair in one corner and sat, bringing her legs up under her. Her mobile phone was perched on the arm of the chair. Stephanie held one hand close, trying to think of the space between her hand and the phone as a series of interlocking objects. Moving one would move another, which would move another, which would move the phone. She focused, opened her hand slowly, and then snapped open her palm, like she'd seen Skulduggery do. Nothing happened. She made a fist, then tried again. The phone stayed where it was, just like it had done the previous 50 times she tried. How's it going? She looked up as Tanith Lowe approached. You're starting off too big, Tanith said. The phone's too heavy. A paperclip would be enough. I don't have paperclip, Stephanie said. Tanith took the book from her, opened it, and balanced it on the arm of the chair. Use that, she said. Stephanie frowned. But that's even heavier than the phone. Not the book, just a page. Stephanie said. She concentrated again, flexed her fingers, and splayed the page. The page didn't turn. It didn't even lift. It takes time, Tanith said, and patience. Lots of patience. I don't have time, and I've never had patience. Tanith struggled. Well, there's always the possibility that you just can't do magic. If it's one thing to know it exists, it's quite another to be able to do it yourself. I suppose, Stephanie said. Mind, that's some bruise you've got there. Stephanie glanced at her arm to where her sleeve was pulled back. I had a bit of trouble, she said. So I see. Did you give as good as you got? Not really, Stephanie admitted. But most of the bruising was done by a tree anyway, so... Well, I fought just about every opponent you could name. But I've never been attacked by a tree. Well done. Why, thank you. Tanith dug into her pocket and brought out a piece of yellow porous rock. Run a bath, let this dissolve. A few minutes in there and the bruises will be all gone. Stephanie took the rock. Thank you, she said, and Tanith shrugged. I don't want to scare you, but this mightn't be the best time for someone to start learning magic. Bad things are happening. Stephanie didn't say anything. She didn't know anything about Tanith, and she didn't know how many sides there were in the coming conflict. She wasn't about to start trusting perfect strangers. Thanks for the rock, she said. Not a problem, dear, Tanith responded. Us warriors have to look out for one another. Stephanie saw movement through the stacks. The man in the bow tie was back, which meant China had returned. I have to go, she said at once, getting up from her chair. She found China in the apartment, her back to Stephanie as she approached. Have you told the elders? Stephanie asked. Word has been sent, China said without turning. You sent word? That's it. Do not presume to question me, child. Stephanie glared at her. I really wish you wouldn't call me child. China turned. And I really wish you would pick a name, so I wouldn't have to. Why aren't we going to the rescue? Going to the rescue? China said with a laugh. On our horses? Is that right? With bugles sounding and flags flying? You think that's how it works? Skulduggery has come to my rescue. Well, they don't make them like him anymore, do they? Sending word isn't good enough. Meritorious has to be told. Tell him that we need Skulduggery to get the sceptre. Tell him that without Skulduggery, Serpine will destroy everything. Tell him whatever you want, but we have to make the elders act. And then what? They call the Cleavers to action, they call their allies together, and then we all go merrily along, skipping to war. Child, you know nothing about war. You think it's big and it's loud and it's good versus evil. Well, it isn't. War is a delicate thing. It requires precision. It requires timing. We don't have time. Not so. Time is in short supply, but we still have it. So you're delaying. Why? I cannot have chaos erupting around me until I am prepared for it. I am a collector. I am an observer. I don't participate. My resources and my standing must be secure before I am allowed the uncertainty of war to crash down upon us. And what of Skulduggery? While you're waiting for the right moment to tell everyone Serpine is the bad guy, Skulduggery might be killed. The hesitation that flickered across China's face was barely noticeable. There are casualties in any conflict. Stephanie hated her. She turned and stormed back to the open door. Where are you going? She called after her. I'm going to do what you are too scared to do. Oh, no, you're not. The door slammed shut before Stephanie reached it, and she spun around. China was walking towards her, her exquisite face perfectly calm. You have no right, China said softly, to plunge us all into war. Who are you to decide when to fight? Why should you decide when we die? I want to just help my friend, Stephanie said, taking a step back. Skulduggery is not your friend? She narrowed her eyes. You don't know what you're talking about. And you don't know him, child. He has anger in him like you have never seen. He has hatred in him like you would never dream about. This is not one place he would rather be than where he is right now. You're crazy. He told you how he died, then? Yes, he did. He was killed by one of Malevolent's men. No. Nefarian Serpine killed him, China said. He tortured him first, purely for fun. He ridiculed him and he stripped him of his powers, and then he pointed at him. Did you know that's all it takes with that red right hand of his? For him to point, and then it's over. Agonizing death, Skulduggery had said. Stephanie hadn't realised he had felt it himself. She shook her head defiantly. Doesn't change anything. When he came back, he fought Malevolent's forces with a single-minded determination, not to defeat evil, but to have his revenge on Malevolent's lackey. Malevolent himself fell, but just as Skulduggery was in a position to claim his vengeance, there was a truce, Stephanie said slowly. And suddenly his enemy was now a protected citizen. Skulduggery has been waiting a long time to get his revenge, and he will risk anyone and anything in order to get it. Stephanie stood up straighter. Even if you're right, that doesn't change the fact that he has been the only one investigating my uncle's murder, or that he seems to be the only one around here who cares about what is really going on, or that he has saved my life. And put it at risk. Every good thing he has done for you has been cancelled out by bad thing he has done to you. You don't owe him anything. I'm not going to abandon him. It is hardly your choice. What are you going to do? Stephanie challenged China. I'm simply going to ask you to do what I say. Well, then the answer's no. My dear Stephanie. Stephanie froze. China looked at her. I have known your name since before I met you, child. Your uncle spoke of you often. Stephanie lunged for the door, but it was no use. Stephanie, China said softly. Stephanie's hands dropped to her sides and she turned. Tell no one of this. Stephanie felt it inside her and she knew she would obey. Knew no matter how much she raged against it, she would obey. She had no choice. So she nodded as tears stung her eyes and China smiled, that beautiful smile of hers. And that is the end of chapter 14 and where we're going to leave it today. Before I have a coughing fit. I'll pick it up again on chapter 15. See you later. Bye-bye.